Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday. Thankfully, this day is going slowly. Needs to go slower yet. Um, we're going to have an interesting topic today. Um, Science versus religion, and I used the term religion specifically. I did not put science versus God. I didn't put science versus Christianity. I didn't put science versus relationship. I put science versus religion. Can they coexist? And the answer, of course, is not only can they coexist, they fuel each other. Yes, yes. Science and religion fuel each other. If you take a look and see what happens when science becomes a mainstay, you have domination. If you look and see when religion becomes the mainstay, you have domination. The fact is that religion and science are one and the same. So before anybody gets mad, maybe I should define religion for you. Hey, welcome, Donna. Good to see you here not working. That's an amazing thing. Religion is a horrible thing. Horrible. Worst thing ever. Religion is. Religion can be blamed for just about every problem facing man today. Science has become the tool of religion, and in some cases, science itself is a religion. So, religion and science can indeed coexist, and 100% of the time, they reinforce and substantiate each other. Now, can God and science coexist the way man wants to have things coexist? No. Science, in and of itself, wants us to depend upon it because they consider it hard, fast, cold facts, which it's not because it evolves ever so often, creating brand new ways of doing something. Heck, 10 years ago, we only had two genders. 10 years ago, we had two genders. Today, science says we have Baskin Robbins. So, as you can see, just on that premise alone of science, God can't coexist with that. Now, I've always thought that maybe perhaps that science proves God or that you can get an acknowledgement of who God is through science. You can't. That's not the goal of science. Science was not invented or found or given to prove God. So I will never use science to prove God. I use God to prove God. I don't need science to prove God. Science can discover God's greatness. They can find where and how he did something. It's not proving him. He doesn't need proving. He is. But you can help yourself believe on certain things. Two things in particular um, that have always jumped out at me as to Well, God's hilarity, but also his ability to stump people. The greatest scientists on earth only know enough. They only know enough. And they can only tell you about the function of something by its malfunction. You ever realize that? They can tell you something about how it works by how it doesn't work, but they can't tell you how it works. They can't. You want proof? Okay. We'll start with one thing in particular. Okay. One very important body part, and that be the human eye. Let's just take a look at the human eye. Okay. One of the cool things about the human eye, okay, it inverts the image that is coming in so you can see it again in its real form. So what it actually sees is the inverted version. But what your brain translates is the proper version. The eye sees everything inverted. Now, science has yet to replicate the eye in full. They have yet to be able to do it. They have tried. They have tried and failed. Here's the problem, though. They will be quick to tell you that the eye, the human body, us people came from zip, zero, nothing, out of nowhere. And due to an explosion, we became these living, moving, thinking, emotional, complicated, complex creatures totally by accident. And not only that, not only by accident did that happen, the continued result of that accident created more accidental things and then became order. So it went from explosion, accident to order. And I'm supposed to believe that. That's more far fetched than a creator. Way more far fetched. Now, the human eye is a very cool little thing. So I want to read this particular part right here. Having different refractive indexes is what bends the rays to form an image. Okay. The light rays finally are received and focused on the retina. The retina contains photoreceptor cells called rods and cones, and these basically detect the intensity and the frequency of light. Further, the image that is formed is processed by millions of these cells. And they also have to relay the signal or nerve impulses to the brain via the optic nerve. The image formed is usually inverted, but the brain corrects the phenomena. This process is also familiar, so similar to that of a convex lens. I want you to really think about this, just the eye, okay? Just think about this for a minute. Without your brain, everything is upside down. Without your brain, everything is upside down. Do you see something weird here? You see something weird here? The eye being able to see and receives everything. Okay. It's there's a transfer unit. And then the actual motherboard of your computer knows what is right for you to see. This is the part where I say science cannot explain. Let's just say the eye inverts everything. The brain translates everything to normal. Without the brain, nothing is normal. Nothing. Then it can do it a second time if you stand on your head in instantaneous fashion. No load screens, no delay, instantaneous. And all of that happened from soup or two cells colliding. That's what you want me to believe. That every intricate detail of the eye is happenstance. But you can't replicate said happenstance. That's what you want me to believe. Okay. So let's take a look at the other guy. Okay, the other guy. Who is this other guy? The brain. Let's take a look at the brain. Okay. Now, the brain. And again, remember I said science knows everything from what it's not, all by failure. They register stuff by failure, not discovering it on their own. They know what it doesn't do. Hence, they can deduce what it does. They still can't explain the brain. Here's why they can't explain the brain. We know what the brain is, we know what it's made, how it feels, all that stuff. Not one scientist has ever been able to tell me why the brain is. They can tell me certain functions of the brain, where certain parts of the brain control what they do. So let's break down what they know about the brain, shall we? The forebrain: cerebrum, hypothalamus, and thalamus. Controls reproductive functions, body temperature, emotions, hunger, and sleep. How did they figure this out? Their experimentations on the human body, they watched the reaction of the person. But here's the flip side. Even knowing all that, there are people who have mastered control over the brain, forcing the brain to shut off pain receptors, reactionary decisions. How? How? If the brain is the hub for the eye, for the body, everything runs through that motherboard. Okay, everything. So explain to me how you can dictate what the brain does if the brain dictates what the body does. Might sound like elementary dumb questions, right? But I never said I was a brain surgeon. I never said I was a intelligent superhuman. That's not me. Never claimed that, never will claim that. But science has not answered these questions for me. I've asked them all along. They've never answered these questions for me. You can't explain to me how the brain came together. You can't explain to me how every single body part depends on the other. You can't explain to me how any of the functions of the body correlate with everything in synchronicity. You can't tell me. You can assume, and science can say, well, because the body does and doesn't, this is what we. You can tell me all that, but you can't give me a why. You want us to believe, science wants us to believe that we are a product of an uncaring system, a massive amount of explosion at the right time, right speed, with the right reaction at just the right time for this to take place, for life, electrical activity to take place and thrive on only one location. I would like an explanation to that, period. What do you mean by fake science? I'd like to know what you mean by fake science. Science cannot prove God. God gives credence to any scientific discovery made by man. Science cannot prove God. God gives credence to any scientific discovery made by man. A person looking at a oak tree or a sequoia tree or one of the redwood trees, having never seen a tree before, looking at the massive size of these things, and then you show them a seed and you tell them, you know, you know, that tree came from this, and they were like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Uh, That's really really large, and that's really really small. That doesn't how. So then science begins to tell them, well, what happens is the seed goes into the ground, germinates, breaks open, and then this plant starts to grow out. And the plant over time becomes this massive tree because its growth potential is astronomical. And with the right temperatures, the right soil, moisture content, and the right amount of sunlight, this tree will be massive over years and years and years and years and years. Okay. Just like a human. Little thing grows up, germinates, comes out, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Then the person says to you, but that still doesn't make sense how all that information to do all that abides in that little seed. How? Just tell me how. How does a seed contain the codes to create a giant redwood? Tell me. Well, because it does. You see, everything is it just does that. It's a built-in function. But why? This is the same problem that religions run into. The exact same problem that science runs into trying to explain things is the same problem that religion runs into trying to explain things. Because you see, with religion, they want you to believe that a lot of the things happening is controlled by man. God might be ultimately in control, but man's ultimately the one carrying out everything. Um, Religion harps on the things seen, the things you do, and how you behave, all dictated by man's doing. No God involved, You remember when monks used to beat themselves? Or you take a pilgrimage, religion. Relationship dictates your behavior, not you. When I have a marriage and I want to show my wife that I care or I want to do something nice for her, my first inclination is not to say, well, I have to do it because I have to. That would be religious. I live here. I guess I might as well do that. That'd be religious. My love compels me to do it, though. My love does not see an obstacle. The love that I have forces the behavior, it becomes inextricable from me. I don't have to find will to do it. I don't have to find gumption to do it. It becomes a natural flowing thing. Religion does never harp on love. It never gets you to the point of understanding a relationship with God. It makes you have to do things in order to believe that that's the way to stay in God's good graces. It's no different than science. Science contends that you have to believe what the head people have come up with, provable, demonstrable, equation based. Even though the whole advent of science was curiosity. When I look at science from a perspective of God, I'm realizing something very, very different than what I've been told. This is what I had always been told. And I've heard people say this before. Um, he'll help you if you help yourself. I've heard that one before. Not biblical, but you've heard it. God is waiting for you to do first before he can do. God needs you to take a step of faith before he will act. You've heard all these before? You've heard all of these before? Here's some reality for you. If God calls you to do something, is he still waiting for you to act for his calling to be real? No. His calling is still his calling. He wishes for me to participate in the calling he has. I either do or I don't. The outcome of my following is built in to the following. When I participate with him in that calling, the outcome is already done because he's in charge of the outcome. He's not waiting for me to do so he can do. The doing is already done. He's asking me to partner with him so I can see it come to fruition. And exactly, he'll get somebody else. I asked myself once, do you think Nineveh would be saved anyway? Is it that Nineveh was going to be saved anyway? The same thing as if would have Sodom and Gomorrah been destroyed anyway? The answer is yes. Yeah, yeah. Why? Because that's what he wanted to do. He called Jonah to tell the people. He wanted Jonah to understand a lesson too, just as much as he wanted to see Nineveh saved. All Jonah had to do was go and tell them. They were waiting. That ground was ripe and waiting. He was using Jonah for it. The same way with Sodom and Gomorrah. He knew their heart. He knew that no one in Sodom and Gomorrah was worth it because none of them wanted him. Lot lived there. For the most part, Lot followed God. So they knew about Lot. They knew about Lot. And God knew their heart. You notice how he didn't save Lot's wife? Because Lot's wife didn't want saving. The same way Sodom and Gomorrah people didn't want saving. Jonah didn't want Nineveh to be saved. So he rebelled. I am not going there. Nope, not going there. But what God wants, God gets. What God wants, he gets. What God plans comes to fruition. You can't say that about science. You ever heard about failed experiments? Failed experiments. That's how science discovers stuff, is by failure. Everything God does is by success. Science, root of science is failure. The root of God is success, which is why they cannot coexist. They cannot. Because what science requires you to do is to trust it fully. What requires of you is to trust it fully. You can't do both. So then you have to go to the hierarchy. Who's more important? Obviously, God. Science is more important to science and man, but ultimately, God's more important. This is why they cannot coexist. But religion is going to be the crux by which science pushes God to the side in many people's lives. You want to know why people won't fall for signs and wonders anymore? You want to know what the best way to never fall for a sign and wonder? Attribute it to science. Attribute it to science. That's all you have to do. It's a phenomena. Or science can reproduce that. That's not big. Or they'll tell you, oh, the human body is kind of complicated, so that could have happened to anybody. Or you're going crazy. You can't hear God talk to you. No, that's impossible. That's a sure sign that your brain isn't working right. God has a calling on your life? No, 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 no. That's religion talking. If you hear something talking to you, that's definitely mental problems. One more part of the brain I want us to look at, the hind brain, the lower part of the brain, cerebellum, medulla, and pons. You probably, if you watch, ever watched Waterboy, his medulla oblongata. These are the functions they say of the high brain, of the hind brain. It coordinates all processes necessary for survival. These induce breathing, heartbeat, sleep, wakefulness, and motor learning. Now again, the brain. You want people to believe that through an explosion in time and from nothing more than a soup, the human brain was formed, compartmentalized to function and control certain body parts, mental and physical, just happened to place itself in regions, create connections to each body part with trillions of connections, then can isolate every movement with emotion, can link an attack on the body to a non physical portion, an emotion somewhere in the regions of the brain that you translate as a liquid or a signal. You want me to believe that an explosion was the reason for all of that. That in a boom, the eye can see something inverted, the brain in a snap can translate it so you can see properly, all the while, all the while handling everything else on the body. Everything. You can feel pain in two different locations. Isolate in your mind where that pain is coming from, all from an explosion. That's what you want me to believe about science. And then you want me to believe that there's a region in the brain that handles dreams that never happened, feelings, emotions that you can't really isolate in a real world setting. You can control it. You can shut it down by shutting down the place where you think the brain controls it by killing that portion of the brain. But you have no concept of how to control the emotion or where it comes from or how it developed. It just is. I have a pretty good computer and I can move my mouse, and the hand motion I make with the mouse, it responds pretty quickly. But even that, you can see a slight delay. I have seen computers, supercomputers, that you can hook up to your face and you smile, and the camera registers it and it moves in real time. None of the equipment created by man today can ever or will ever function as fast as the human brain, nor can it multitask as well as the human brain, nor can it function as long as the human brain, nor can it learn like the human brain. Mankind is yet to even replicate the functions of the human brain after how long? You can't even replicate the functions of the eye to a T. You have not understood anything about the human brain. You may understand how to shut it down. You can't tell me why it is. You can come up with ways to control certain things by shutting off something else. Remember, I said science all about failure? It's not about success. Their success is in their failure, their success is in killing something else. How do you control somebody scientifically? Shutting them down. That's how you do it. How do you console somebody religiously? Shut them down. That's how you do it. How do you prove science? By failure. How do you prove religion? By your failure. Science and religion already coexist. Science and religion already coexist. They're one and the same. There are many who are atheists and follow scientific reasoning. There are many who say they believe in God, but all they do is religion. They're one and the same. They are one in the same. If you follow a religion because of the name, I grew up Baptist and I grew up this. Now, that's not relationship. That's an ID tag that scientists use to say this is what that is. Now, it's been a while since I saw this movie, but I found it hilarious at the time. I still find this particular scene hilarious. It's in Young Frankenstein. And when he sends him to get the brain for his project, he sends him to get one of the greatest minds ever to bring him that brain. So he goes to the morgue, finds himself in the place where they keep the brains, grabs the one he's supposed to get, and it drops out of his hand because he got scared. And he turns around and he finds a different brain. And he takes that brain to his master. Well, it turns out that the brain didn't do what it was supposed to do because he got the wrong brain. So when he asked him, "What brain did you get?" He says, Abby. Abby who? Abby normal. You you gave me an abnormal brain? Why did I even mention that? I'll tell you why. Religion is the helper, scientist is the scientist. Us here, when the people who are following I shouldn't say us, people who follow religion will go and they'll say, okay, we take what God said. Right. I'm going for good. Got it. But you know what? If I happen to mess that up, I'll just pick for myself something else. And it's still a brain. Still a brain. This will work. This will work just fine. Don't worry about it. Still a brain. I'm sure God will approve. It'll be okay. The scientist is very specific about his thing. I want that particular brain. You don't give him that brain, his whole project is done. No, he can no longer do what he's got to do. Now he's mad. And I have to deal with the fact that you gave me something that will eventually fail. Yet they both still continue to work with each other and with what they have. They don't scrap it. No, no, they don't scrap it. They continue with it. Because in science, failure is inevitable. And that's how you prove that you're right. And with religion, it's all about what you do. So either way, I'm good. But with relationship, neither process functions because you're supposed to do it by the approval of God. Man doesn't like that. Man doesn't like that. Man hates that. Man wants to dictate man's behavior. He came up with religion. Man wanted to control everything else, science. But when God is in control, it's relationship. There are so many people today that are part of denominations, part of groups and cliques, and they put their identity in the part of them that is assigned to a belief system. Not a who, a what. Not a who. They go by tradition, they go by pomp and circumstance, they go by certain orders, they go uh, by rituals, and they assign a name to it known as a denomination. First Church of God in the Father, Holy Water Church, First Episcopalian Baptist Religious Church, all these names to assign to them that attend it the air that they're doing something that only they can do. Not called, just a name. And if you're not part of that named church, you're not a part of God. Because after all, God, He names the church. That's religion. And religion will always be a measuring stick for how much better you are than somebody else. That's all religion is. I learned that from my ex father in law. Religion is a measuring stick to show how much better you are than somebody else. Because, hey, I have milestones of how much better I did. This week, I did 20, mark it 20 times a prayer in my closet alone. This week, I fed 15 different homeless people. This week alone, I gave more than $50 to homeless people. What have you done? I waited on God to show me what to do. Psh, some Christian you are. Get up and go do. I don't move unless he tells me to move. I don't jump ahead of him. I stay until he tells me to do something. You're being lazy for God. You need to get up and do stuff for God. Do what? Anything without his say so? Just randomly get up and start doing stuff without no consulting him? Just do it because religion. Religion. Don't conflate the two. Don't confuse the two. A relationship will always wait for the heralding of the person that you serve. Always. It's like, okay, go back to marriage because it's a perfect example. You know that your spouse gets up at 6 a.m. every day. Every day gets up at 6 a.m. every day. And you know their routine, okay? You may not be up, but you know their routine. They get up, they go to the kitchen, they get their coffee or their tea, they come and sit down in the living room to be still for about half hour. You decide on your own steam that you're going to get up at 5:45. You want to get up before them, and you get their coffee ready and put it in the spot that they are. You're thinking you're doing something grand. Lo and behold, your spouse gets up, goes to the coffee. There's okay, not so they go to sit down, and they find their cup of coffee 15 minutes old, cold. If you knew your spouse, you would understand one major thing, that their process in the morning is theirs, not yours. Their process in the morning is theirs, not yours. And the best thing you can do is nothing until they tell you, hey, I'd like you to wake up with me in the morning and have some coffee or tea with me. You don't. You don't. Which is why you don't step ahead of God until He asks you to. And then we have the flip side. When He does ask you to, you don't go do it. You find every reason to be a Jonah. Or you be a Moses, or you be an Abraham. You find every reason under the sun when He does call you to find something else to do. When He don't call you to do it, you're quick to go do stuff. When He does call you, I mean, look. Okay, look. I got a whole bunch of stuff to first, right, and then. But honestly, me, why you call him like me? Come on, me. You can get somebody else to do that. I I don't really feel like doing that. I don't I don't think that's me. That's not me. Okay, it's not me, God. I mean, that might be somebody else. Go talk to them. Do not get ahead of the man, and don't be reluctant. This experiment is not about failure because everything about God is success. Everything is about success when it comes to God. And it's not about man made success or man's version of success either. It's his version of success. And the only way you can achieve that success is by following every to a T letter that he asks you to do. No straying, no sidestepping, no shortcutting. I ask you to do one thing every time. And let's take it back to the author, right? But when you do take it back to the author, make sure you listen. Make sure you listen. Good question. I was asked before, how do we know God is talking to us and that it's not just the flesh? Here's how I gauge it. If I feel reluctant to do it, knowing the outcome is something beneficial for somebody else, I'm fighting something probably from Him. I'll give you an example. I used to just drive past people all the time. Okay, all the time on the street, the hitchhikers. And one day I passed one and something tell me to pick him up. There were things in me that was saying, hitchhikers, they could have a gun, they could kill you. But one thing I did realize is that I, in myself, would not want to pick them up. And this is how I gauged it. I knew for myself, I wouldn't do it. I knew for a fact you wouldn't see me randomly driving around the place just going to pick up people because that's not me. That was not me. It wasn't going to be me. That no, no. That inclination, I knew right away was not of me, but it also wasn't of the devil. That's not how the devil operates. I gave, and I think I told this story before. I did what I heard to do, had a good conversation, took them to a bus station, paid for their bus ticket. Then they went missing. No one saw them coming with me. No one saw them left. The other side to listening, if it goes against your grain, he will confirm it when it's done. When you've done it, he confirms it. Corey and I started off something on Too Strong, and we went at it from our what we wanted. It did just like every science experiment ever known to man, and it failed. We came back together again. We tried a second time, still being stupid enough to try and doing it our own way. But he was a little more gracious this time around. We still failed in what our endeavor was, but we failed while he was showing us what the formula for what he wanted was. We had done enough growing in him, listening, that we could see, oh, all right, whatever you want, we gonna do it. Whatever you want, we're doing it. The formula that he had is a success formula. The formula that we had was a scientific failure, was religion. This is why science will never, has never, can never not only prove God, but it can never coexist with God. God is outside of science. You might want to say science proves God. No, that only proves what God did. Science will only prove everything God did because God can't fail, so it can't prove God. It can prove what God did. And by proving what God did, all that does is open the avenue for the relationship. Otherwise, you're just going to take that science into the so called God realm and call it religion. And there you will find a very happy and complete unity because they're one and the same. Both suffer every day with failure and call it success. They both do. Relationship doesn't have that. The relationship is focused on the person, who he is outside of circumstance and outside of action. It's just who he is. And who he is perfect, and who he is never fails. Period. If you are part of religion, get out of it. Step into the relationship. Religion is the science and when it comes to God. Religion is just science when it comes to God. And science is religion when it comes to atheists. They're one and the same. All about failure, all about what you do. Tomorrow, we have another good one. I think um, tomorrow we'll be talking about visions and dreams. We'll be going into quite a few of the visions and dreams that men throughout the Bible, women throughout the Bible have gotten. What was the reason behind it? What was the end result? All of that. We'll go into it. Is it something that people have today for a ministry? What's the reason for it? Um, does it have any value? All of that we'll be going into come tomorrow with visions and dreams. And then the uh, the day after, we're going to be talking about the wrath of God and why is it no longer spoken about? Because it seems to be ignored. The wrath of God is it doesn't get talked about at all. And then on Friday, like I said, we'll be talking about the Jezebel spirit. Okay? Talking about the Jezebel spirit on Friday. Um, hopefully everyone is going to have a grand weekend when the weekend does show up. But tomorrow's the middle of the week. Um, and it being the middle of the week, I want to give you a challenge of sorts. Um, open up yourself to one request to God for Him to do whatever His will is in your day to day life. Just if you haven't done it before, do it. If you are doing it, continue. But ask Him to do something phenomenal that will be something that you would never, ever, 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 ever see yourself doing for Him. Just ask Him. Um, I think you'll be pleased with the result. It's faith affirming, if nothing else. So, again, don't miss tomorrow. Visions and dreams, wrath of God, Jezebel spirit. Okay, cool. Um, again, there's a scrolling ticker at the bottom. If your desire or wish is to help, assist anyway, those are the two avenues you can. Some people prefer to do a mail-in. You can just inbox me, email me, and I can get you that. I won't put that on the screen. So there you go. As I always say, wisdom calls to you from the street. So please, 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 please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams for if dreams die.